I'm with you. Nice to be with you.
It works. It's recording. Boker Tov.
Boker Or.
I only know 4 words. I'm happy to have you for the second time. Last time, I think we sorted out the Jewish question once and for all. Today, we are going to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in less than 1 hour. I think it's going to be easy.
I'm not too sure about it, but I appreciate your optimism.
So, to start with the definitions, it's always very important. What is your definition of Zionism?
So I don't really need my definition because in different phases in history, Zionism was defined initially by its founders and then by its leaders at the time. What is so fascinating for me about Zionism, and to a certain extent, some people, including myself, see me as an early Zionist enthusiast, because the early Zionists accepted that something was deeply morbid in the Jewish diaspora identity. They could see, and it's a Western movement, so I'm not talking about the Jewish diaspora in Morocco, in Iraq. They didn't even know about those. They didn't know much about these Jewish communities, and they didn't care about them till 48 when they needed to establish a demography, and they needed soldiers. So the whole idea was that they realized that something is really wrong about diaspora Jews in the late 19th century, and they wrote about it openly. Since I didn't know what we were exactly talking about, what this talk is all about, so I didn't prepare the exact quote, but you basically can find people like Ber Borchov, who was a Jewish nationalist socialist, who spoke about the parasitic nature of diaspora Jewry. You can look at the work of Ade Gordon, Aaron David Gordon, who is probably the most important, most influential intellectual within this context of so-called left or nationalist socialist early Zionism, who spoke about the horrid nature of the diaspora Jews. And here is where I'm kind of splitting from early Zionists. They said, yes, we have a problem, but it is not our fault. It is because we are detached from our land. We are not on our land. We are living in exilic condition within many lands. And once we manage to go back to our promised land, I don't say that this was their land, but this is how they saw it, and we will change radically, and we will be once again light to the going. And this is very interesting because they managed to achieve the most incredible thing. They were very unpopular in the beginning because they were anti-Semitic. They agreed with the most vile anti-Semites that there was a problem. It didn't make them popular at all amongst Jews for the same reason that Jews don't like to deal with the critical voices. By the way, Israel is better in dealing with dissent because of that, because of its origin. It started as a dissenting movement within the Jewish world. There went few of them, just very few, what we learned to call the pioneers. They settled there. They started to buy Palestinian land in the early stages, and they did it with money that they received from very rich Jews like Montefiore and Rothschild and so on and so on. And this is very crucial to understand. In early Zionism, there was never rejection of Jewish wealth. They were socialists, they saw themselves as Marxists, but they were very happy to use the money of rich Jews in order to accomplish their mission. And basically, fascist movement, when we discussed it last time, I think, didn't see a contradiction between the working class and capitalist wealth. If it serves the nationalist cause, it is kosher. So I myself, to a certain extent, grew up with the fantasy, with this early Zionist fantasy of erecting a new Jewish state, and most important, bringing along a new Jew who is nationalist, who is connected to the soil. This is why there was such an concentration on farming, the kibbutzim, their agriculture, and they established, they invented basically a new agriculture collective setting that was the kibbutz, or the kibbutza, they first called it, where they shared everything, basically. I go back to your question. So Zionism was very specific what it was all about, what it wanted to achieve. However, the promise was to take all the Jews away and to bring them to Palestine. And this never happened because Zionism, and this is very important, from the Israeli Hebrew perspective, stopped in 1948. If Zionism was a promise to establish a Jewish state in Zion, on the land of Palestine, this project was accomplished in 1948, and the revolution pretty much ended. Now, I write a lot and I speak a lot about it. It is very reasonable to argue that the revolution was still in place and had a significant effect till 1967 and even 1973. There was a lot of willingness to die. Still in 1973 is the October War, what the Israelis and Jews called the Yom Kippur War. However, between 1967 and 1973, there is a huge transition in the Israeli society. It's the most significant decade in the history of the Jewish state. It's actually the transition from Zionism or Zionist philosophy to the idea of a Jewish state, something that was actually completed by Netanyahu in the last 20 years, or even 25 years. And now, literally speaking, there is no such a thing as Zionism.
Yeah.
Most Israelis don't even understand what it means. And Israel doesn't define itself as the Zionist state. It defines itself as the Jewish state. Yeah? And in the Israeli parliament, there is not one party that calls itself a Zionist party or something that is related to Zionism. They have Abait Yehudi, the Jewish Home, the Kahol Lavan, it's nationalist, it's the blue and white, yeah? They don't have, they used to have parties that call themselves the General Zionist and so on. It doesn't exist anymore. There is not one Zionist party. Now, for Israelis, Zionism means nothing for the obvious reason that they are the post-revolutionary product. So, since I was born in Israel, the idea of transforming the diaspora Jews into Zionists didn't apply to me. I was already born fixed. All right? The Zionism still means a lot to diaspora Jews. And this is why, and this is very, very crucial. And I'm saying a lot of things that may be new to you and maybe new to a lot of your listeners, but this is the way to look at it. The debate between Zionism and anti-Zionism means nothing to the Israelis. It means a lot to the diaspora Jews. Mm-hmm. Because they are divided between those who plan to be transformed or believe in this transformation, and those very few, and there are Jewish anti-Zionists are very, very few, who think that it's loads of nonsense, and they actually prefer to identify themselves as Jewish. Yeah, so we have Jewish Voice for Peace. Mm-hmm. Jewish Voice for Peace, they practically identify with their Jewishness. They're not universal voice for peace. If you're not a Jew, you probably are not going to be the secretary or the definitely not the treasury. All right, and this is very crucial. So it's kind of an internal debate. The problem that we have with the Israeli-Palestinian discourse, which is what I guess you want to talk about, as I realized from your first question, is that the entire conflict has become now an internal debate between Jews, between the Zionist Jews or the nationalist Jews and the so-called anti-Zionists. Now, this is, I would like to say trick, but this is not trick, maybe is not the right word. It's a strategy that Jewish politics is putting into play for generations. What we see now in the world, leave Zionism for a second. You know, the debate between American right and American so-called radicals. Who are the radicals? Who is funding the radicals? It's basically now turned into an internal Jewish debate. The total mess in America. And by the way, let me tell you that the other day I heard a guy, an American intellectual called Dennis Prager. Do you know the name?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. I really recommend to check him out, not because I agree with him, actually I don't, but it is amazing to see that the most, or one of the most, I really want to say most, but out of politeness, one of the most eloquent and articulate voices of American right and anti this radical Antifa blah 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 is a Jew who speaks about sustaining Christian values with more confidence than most American right wings. Now, this is a very clever setting because the Palestinians are now removed from the discussion about their fate. The black are removed from the discussion about their fate. When we have neocon wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and all those awful wars, it becomes again kind of the neocon school is perceived as a Zionist Jewish school, and the most the loudest voices, dissenters, are also Jews. So every subject that is crucial and even mildly relevant to Jewish existence it's always reduced into an internal Jewish debate.
So if I understand,
and by the way, this is one of the reasons that I don't want to be a Jew, because I don't want to be part of this debate. I want to point at it, but I obviously see it because I was raised in Israel and was regarded there as the salt of the Jewish earth. So if I would be there, I would probably have. I don't know, I would probably be involved in one Jewish business or another, either in intelligence or startups or something like that. And I'm very happy that I'm not.
So for those who don't know, maybe you don't, I've been working quite a lot in the past 40 years in and out of Israel in technology, in software, selling stuff to Israeli companies. And so I've spent a lot of time in Israel. And it's my biggest impression is one of a Middle Eastern country that is mostly one nation, that is a normal nation in terms of how people live. They care about their own things. They feel they're Israeli. For most people. And in general, they want peace with the Palestinian neighbors. What I also noticed is that the political system in Israel is very fragmented with a lot of small parties and has quite a lot of corruption. On the other hand, it is also a real democracy where a lot of politicians end up going into jail. There is a lot of more fighting against corruption than in France or some other countries. So in that context, of course, it seems, since all my life, probably all your life, that we have not figured out a solution for the Palestinian people who actually, some of them live within Israel as Israeli citizens, and of course the majority of them live in the occupied territories, and even many of them live as a Palestinian diaspora across the Middle East and United States and everywhere. How does the fact that now Israel is a normal country, why can't we get a solution for the Palestinians as well?
To start with, it's not a normal country, and we have to define what is a normal country. You can say that it is a nationalist country, and is certainly far from being shy about its nationalism, about its racial discriminatory philosophy. I don't say that the Jews are a race, but the Jewish state is racially discriminatory. and they live in peace with it. So this is definitely not the norm, but one of the reasons that some people, and I have a feeling that you like walking there, is because people feel good about it, some, and some feel awful. I didn't want to live in the state, obviously, and I left and never came back. Which is a very interesting thing in itself, because it took me another 30 years to understand that I left Israel because I felt very comfortable with the early Zionist ideals, but I felt very uncomfortable with the transformation of Israel into Jewish state. And though people like Shlomo Zahn kind of touch this kind of intellectually touch this transition, and nobody really articulated. I would believe that Shlomo Zahn decided to stop being a Jew, as is mentioned in his book, in one of his latest books. I don't know if he wrote one after it, because he wanted to be an Israeli. He didn't want to be a Jew. And I can mention a few other names. All right, so to back to the point that you are raising, there is something reassuring about accepting what you are and living accordingly, which is something that most Western people cannot do anymore. All right? If you believe in family values in the West, you are regarded as a reactionary menace to society. If you believe that you want in America, let's say, that you want to sustain your European culture, you are reduced into a white nationalist, or no, white nationalist is how they define themselves, into white supremacist. And you don't say, I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone else, but just the idea that you want to celebrate your ethos. Now, funny enough, Israel is now going through the same process. And I'll tell you something amazing, which is anecdotal, but this is happening. This is happening this week. All right. So there was a case of two footballers who were, if I understand it correctly, two footballers dated two underage girls. If I understand, maybe if I didn't really, I didn't dig into it, but I don't know if there was an intercourse or not. Definitely there was a kind of they were together. All right. I'm not going to talk about sex now, but they were kind of pulverized in the media, in the Israeli media, and I kind of follow the media. And then in the last few days, there was a pride parade in Tel Aviv. And the parade was led by a trans girl, 9 years old. All right?
Yeah.
9 years old, trans. Now, I'm not getting into this debate. I'm just reporting here.
Yeah.
So, one Israeli commentator wrote, sorry, I'm a bit confused. So, footballers are pulverized for dating two 15 years old girls that wanted to, I think that it was consensual, and they said that they couldn't figure out that they were young, and I can understand it. Some young women at that age, it can be confusing, as probably maybe Dershowitz can help us to understand this concept. So I said, so we are kind of naming and shaming these two footballers, while at the same time having 9 years old trans girl leading the Pride celebration. And I read it and I thought, wow, this is it is a point. And I started to read the comments and can you differentiate between, people were criticizing this writer or Twitter or whatever guy. Can you differentiate between underage sex and an identitarian choice of a kid? And all these arguments that we heard in the West. Now, I'm not going to take sides here because I'm not interested and I don't really care. What I'm saying is these debates that are not going to move society forward in terms of production, in terms of wealth, in terms of our safety net, in terms of education, in terms of producing more jobs. These debates that destroyed the West, every Western country, America, Britain, France, it is now destroying Israel as well. So they are not as isolated. Why they are not isolated? And this is a very good point to address the core. You see, always it takes me kind of 45 minutes to answer your question. You asked me how I define Zionism. I said it doesn't matter how we define Zionism because it's irrelevant for most Israelis. But the way it was defined at the time was that to make Jews people like all other people. This is exactly what Theodor Herzl wished for. This was what Zionism stood up for him, to make Jews people like all other people. Now, in my book, The Wandering Who, I argue that this is obviously unachievable because it includes a contradiction. You cannot make people into all other people because all other people don't want to be like all other people. All right? So you Swiss people, you don't want to be like all other people. You're happy to be Swiss. And the Brits don't want to be like all other people. They want to be Brits. Yeah. If they want to be anything as a nation. Yeah? So this mimicking philosophy that is embedded in the core of the Zionist thought made Zionism into a phantasmic project because it makes it very clear that the more the Jews want to be a people, the more they want to be like other people, the more they are removed from what they are. And this is exactly the tension that we see in Israel. Yeah. All right, we see this battle between those who say, listen, if we are a Jewish state, what does it mean? If it means something, we should be guided by the halakha, by the Talmud, by our religious ethos. And then you have the secularist Zionist philosophy say, no, we have to be like all other people. Basically, fuck halakha. We want to be like Americans. We want to be open. We want to be the gay capital. And this is exactly the contradiction between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. And this is why the society is so divided. And this basically addresses the question, all the questions that you asked until now.
I understand. Still, for the Palestinians, whatever debate goes on between Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, they are still stuck in either Ramallah or in Lebanon or in Jordan or in Dubai for the most lucky ones. How can they work to get a nation or country of their own? And would Israel accept that? Because many of...
I'm not one of those who want the Palestinian to get a country or nation of their own. I know very well that one of my grandfathers was an Israeli ultra-right-wing revisionist and I command in a terror organization, the Irgun. I know that he came back based on the fantasy that he was returning to his land. Land that allegedly his ancestor left 2,000 years earlier. So if my grandfather had this idiotic belief in his mind, but he really believed in it. He really believed in it. And my father went to a war. Believing in it, and I was sent to a war based on this philosophy that we can return after 2,000 years.
Yes.
So every Palestinian should be able to return. And this is the only principle that I myself happy to support intellectually. Total right of return. And one of the reasons that I left Israel, I could see that it is not something that is going to be resolved voluntarily. And I don't want to be part of a society that is involved with such a project of ethnic cleansing. So I said, I don't live on the land of Palestine. All those beautiful Jewish leftists, and I won't mention names, why don't you just come and live? Why don't you just invite Palestinians to take your homes? This is. I understand. They have mortgages. It's not. But I was young enough. And I was gifted enough. I could go anywhere, and I started a career. I actually didn't think that I'm going to make a musical career. It was, but I went to continue my academic thing, and ended up doing a lot of few other things. So basically, and I tell you something else. Some of my relatives, as I mentioned, my grandfather was the ultra right wing, and he died as an ultra right wing. But some of his pals were with him in these ultra right wing terror organizations, or what they saw as liberation organizations. After 48, when they realized what happened with the Palestinians, they actually changed sides. And they said, we are part of a huge sin here. We have to take care. Now, there are some incredible Israeli voices. I sometimes didn't agree with Uri Avneri. I don't know if you know the name, but he was an incredible writer. Incredible writer. Okay, great. incredible writer, and beautiful soul. Sometimes he said we differed, but this is absolutely no, it's not a problem for me. We have still people like Gideon Levy, great Haaretz writer. Shlomo Zand contributed a lot. We have Israel Shamir, who doesn't live there as far as I know, but he's from there. I'm from there. The reasons that Zand and Shamir and Levy and Shachak, Israel Shachak, who is rest in peace. The reasons that we, or the reason maybe, that we, it's one reason really, that we are better than the entire world jury in exposing this problem that is inherently J-related rather than Z-related, is because we were raised there. And for us, the meaning of being people like all other people meant to be tolerant. All right? One of the reasons that America is now a dead society, it cannot die, it already died. That Britain is dead. Is dead. It's because they didn't have to identify with the values of tolerance and liberalism and free speech, because they were sure that this is embedded in their culture. They didn't have the mechanism to defend it. In the Jewish world, we don't believe in freedom of speech. You know, look what we did to Jesus, to Spinoza, to Uriel de Costa, to Marx, to Trotsky even, you know. All right? We don't believe in freedom of speech. This is something that belongs to the Goyim. We are from Jerusalem. They are from Athens. So Zionism actually developed the methodical, strict attempt to push as hard as possible to allow dissent, to allow people to explore their thought. Now, look at me. Who are the people who try to stop me? I'm sure that the Israeli government is not happy with my work. And I know, in fact, that the Mossad is interfering with me sometimes. But the people who are doing it openly, I know.
We say hi to them.
Yeah, they will. We are not alone. We are never alone. All right? But they don't do it openly. The people who are doing it openly are the ADL, the Jewish leftists, the Jewish Voice for Peace. They, in the open, interfere with the First Amendment. I don't know if you know, but this is news from today. I monitor all the Jewish press every day, and I got a kind of a victorious headline from the Allgemeine. It's one of those horrendous Jewish outlets, and say, "Hey, we are so happy! You know, the Farrakhan was supposed to give a speech that was supposed to be broadcast online, live, and we buy a kind of Fox something. I think that it is part of the Fox network, but I didn't check it out. And we managed to cancel it. And then somebody sent me, I put it on Facebook, and then somebody sent me ADL kind of victorious. So they are in the open. In America, pissing all over the First Amendment, freedom of speech. This is exactly what Zionism vowed to fix. ADL is the one thing that Zionism promised to fix.
Absolutely.
And there was a moment in Jewish history, 20th century Jewish history, that it flipped. The Zionism or Zionist leaders realized that instead of bringing all the Jews to Palestine, it's much better if Dershowitz stays wherever we are, if Kushner stays wherever we are, if From Emanuel stays wherever we are, if Miliband stays wherever he is.
So indeed, in fact, when I once met Uri Avner in Jerusalem, he mentioned this corruption. I don't know what else to call it. A corruption that mobilizes debate, as you said, and also there is real corruption with the constant state of war between Israel and its neighbors, so that there is a lot of, with the defense industry, there is a lot of commissions for politicians, and there is a lot of money, of course, involved. And this prevents any serious attempts. Okay, I'm more personally for a two-state solution, but I understand your one-state solution. It is, in fact, more philosophical.
By the way, don't misunderstand me. I don't get involved in this discourse. It's not my discourse. I don't live there.
Okay.
I'm just talking about ethical principles. The two-state solution, maybe a lot of Palestinians want a two-state solution. Maybe some Palestinians don't want to live with Jews. It's none of my business. It's a principle. When people are ethnically cleansed, we have to fight for their right to come back. Whether they come back or not, none of my business.
Okay, no, I agree. I was also, when I say I'm more for two-state solution, it's the same as you. On a philosophical point of view, it's not my country. I'm not Palestinian. I'm not Jewish. I'm not Israeli. I cannot do anything. It's just philosophically, I think it would be more simple in a pragmatic way. So I lost my train of thought. But basically, do you see any chance?
You spoke about Uri Avneri and about the fact that there is a lot of business involved, and this is a very interesting. Point, especially now, because we are just recovering from this event that followed the brutal murder of Floyd in Minneapolis. That was caught on camera, and we saw this knee pressing being executed. And I don't know if this is where you wanted to go, but it took hours before we started to see footage, and I knew about it for years, of Israeli soldiers using exactly the same tactics against Palestinians and against Palestinian kids. It took few hours more before we learned that this police unit in Minneapolis was trained in Chicago, I think in 2012, by Israelis.
Yeah.
Now, and it took few minutes before the Israelis and their proxy operators in the diaspora realized that this is a disaster. Mm-hmm. That all this mess in America that they're working for years on, to split America into Hispanic and Jews and black and women and trans, and suddenly they managed now to identify the whites, so to say, which is complete bullshit because there were 4 policemen and 2 were whites, and one was anyway. Not that I'm defending the American police force, there is an issue there, but the issue is way deeper than a single event. The issue, for instance, is that America is operating as an Israeli colony. This is the problem. Yeah, the big America is buying policing military tactics from Israel. So Israel already admitted that it is selling military policing tactics, and they are used in the most awful places by the most awful police forces in the world. The most brutal tactics. And why they buy it from Israel? Because Israel is quite good in suppressing any will for freedom amongst the Palestinians. And now there are more Palestinians between the river, the Jordan River and the sea.
Yeah.
All right? So the majority of the people who live in this territory are Palestinians, and they're not even allowed. I'm not talking about the fact that they're not, only very few of them are allowed to vote. They are not even allowed to go from A to B in a straight line, as if geometry is a Jewish invention, as if Euclides was a rabbi.
Not really.
This is fine. No. All right? So, it is very clear, it was very clear to the Israelis that they are facing a problem, and instead of trying to prove that it was wrong, or even to say, we should have been more careful teaching all these tactics, what they did, they start to call all the people who are referring to this footage and information about the training anti-Semites. And who was the most miserable guy? The labor leader, Keir Starmer, who sucked his education shadow minister, who referred to this information, who retweeted an article that referred to this information. So the situation is that as it stands, everybody is afraid of Israel, which may be good, but it may as well be a disaster. Because people are afraid for a while, and at a certain stage, they find the courage to admit to themselves that they don't like themselves being afraid. And when this happens, when people say enough is enough, this is exactly the dose that you see all throughout Jewish history that makes Jewish history into a continuous disaster.
And indeed,
and we are going there. It's shocking for me to see how, despite the fact that history never repeats itself, everybody learns from history except the Jews, who cry continuously about their history, however, never learned the most important lessons. Now, the most amazing thing for me is, and I'll get a lot of flack for saying it, I must enjoy myself getting flack, because I know that what I say is upsetting for a lot of people and many of my supporters. The most amazing moment in Jewish history is early Zionism, because this is a moment of unique self-reflection. Instead of blaming the Goyim, the Gentiles, you people, the Jews blamed themselves. They said, we have to change. And this is the thing that made Zionism into such a powerful, victorious movement.
Mm-hmm.
And this is exactly what the black in America and Britain and everywhere have to understand. They have to take responsibility for their own change. No, obviously, they are more than entitled. It's absolutely clear that there is discrimination, blah, 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 blah. But they have to look at themselves and see what do we do in order to change it. And there are a lot of ways, they can say, okay, we accept it, or we fight back, or we decide to take a violent part. There are a lot of ways to liberate yourself,
Mm-hmm.
to improve your situation. I'm not saying what it should be. We all can use our brain, and the problem that we see, who is the only black leader, American leader, who engages in self-reflection? Farrakhan. Farrakhan is the only one who stands in front of black students in university and tells them, make sure that you are doing the right thing. He's the only one who tells them that all this positive discrimination that we see in America, in universities, so you can end up studying math even if your results are not good. I heard Farrakhan talking about it. He said, no, you go there, you are very happy for 1 week, but on the third, fourth, 5 weeks, you realize that you don't understand what they're talking about. You want to quit, and they tell you, don't quit. Just go to the Black History department. So we have a lot of Black History professors, and we don't need that many Black History professors. It is a very oppressive system. The way to fight discrimination is not to be a victim.
Of course.
Is not to be a victim. This is what was so incredibly enlightening about Zionism. And guess what? They lost it. Israel is now a ghetto. It is surrounded by walls, and they are victims.
But
they lost it.
But they have nuclear weapons. And my question to you,
victims with nuclear weapons is very frightening.
I know. And so I'm a good friend with Martin van Crevel, the Israeli historian.
He's a very clever guy.
Very clever. And he, I think, shares this concern, maybe on a different angle, but he shares this problem, this analysis. And I will ask you the same question I asked him, in fact. How do you see the future of Israel, considering what you just said, that history repeats itself, and at the same time, now you have to add nuclear weapons to it?
I don't really like to engage in prophecy, but although, despite the fact that I think that you read The Wandering Book, it's really prophetic book. Being in Time is absolutely prophetic. I kind of write about the current events.
Yeah,
I wrote it 5 years ago. I really think that they should integrate me into the Jewish Bible. But Israel is it's a dead project. What do I mean by that? It already turned its back to its most enlightening philosophy, i.e. Zionism. If Zionism was to liberate them from the ghetto, they are living in a devastating ghetto. It's the biggest ghetto in the history of the Jews. It is a very successful ghetto because currently it is led by a very sophisticated man, Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu is frighteningly sophisticated. I don't say that he's a nice guy. I don't talk about his ethics. Look what he managed to do with the corona. He is the only human being on this planet who turned the corona into his survival shtick. Benjamin Netanyahu. You know, you can see Bill Gates tried, say, oh, I have a vaccine, I'll give you a... No, it didn't work. Fauci tried. No. Trump tried to do it, maneuvers. He's not doing very well. Bibi Netanyahu understood that there was an incredible moment. He stood up. He said, and this is in the 11th of March, he said, "Oi, there is a corona, a million people will die, millions of people and tens of hundreds of thousands will die in Israel." He got the entire country into panic. He said, "I want now a unity government." After 3 elections, that they were kind of pretty much stuck. They were not stuck because there is a real political division. There are personal rivalries between Netanyahu and some others. He managed to postpone his trial. He did. He managed to form one of the biggest coalitions in the history of Israel. He managed to destroy Benny Gantz, his #1 political rival. He managed to destroy his party, Kachol Lavan. He did it. All right? So, as long as Benjamin Netanyahu is there, they are somehow safe, not because he's a nice guy. He is a very sophisticated guy, and unlike the political class around the world, from left to right, the entire spectrum, bunch of imbeciles. When you look at the world, you know, we have Netanyahu, we have Putin, we have some clever people in China, and that's it. And by the way, there are some debates whether Trump is a total moron or a total genius. That everybody understands that he cannot be something in between.
No,
but you know, it's not clear. It's not clear what is happening. Nobody managed to suss him out, not including myself. All right, but and this is why I didn't include him. I didn't include him in the list. Most Erdogan obviously is also very sophisticated, but that's it.
Yeah,
that's it. You know, look at Britain. Look at the government. It's pathetic. The opposition is tragedy.
Yeah.
You know, the same in France.
Yes.
The same everywhere. Germany, again, it's the same situation. You know, I think that Merkel is actually definitely a sophisticated lady, but she won't be there forever. And I don't think that the generation she's like Netanyahu. She belongs to another generation. Putin, belong to another generation. And these people are people who were trained for their jobs. We know what Putin went through. We know what Netanyahu went through. You know, he has kind of a minor military career, but in the Israeli best unit and so on and so on. Good education, good upbringing. We don't have these materials anywhere for a reason. The people around the world want us to be led by morons. But Netanyahu is not a moron, and as long as he is in power, I think that they will be able to sustain something in general, and this is something that I should say, the quality of Israeli politicians is higher than what we see in the West. Why? Because it's a military state. It's a military state. It's a state that is in a state of constant conflict. And many of those people who are within the intelligence community, either the Mossad, internal security, the Shabak, the military, the police, and in Israel, intelligence and academia, military and economy are finance are really integrated. So we see that a lot of people who did very well in ITAC, making it to politics. In the current government, we have, I think, 2 or 3 chief of staff, definitely 2, Gantz and Ashkenazi. And we have a few other generals, all right? Now, I don't say that chief of staff is necessarily a very clever person, but he is a person who survived a very demanding, challenging, let's say, hierarchic struggle to the top. All right? So he has to be slightly sophisticated. It is not clear what kind of struggle Boris Johnson went through, or what kind of struggle Trump went through, and so on and so on. So I think that, to address your question, I think that Israel face very serious challenges. As long as Netanyahu is at the helm, they stand a good chance, not because I approve any of his policies, but he's just doing what he believes that he has to do for himself and for his state. And once he's gone, and it's a matter of a few years for him to retire, and he will retire, or even getting kicked out, things will change. It is unsustainable. It is unsustainable, as I mentioned, the majority between the river and the sea are not Jews. There is no way this project can be sustained forever. Also, another issue, the Israeli Jewish society is becoming more and more Orthodox. The people who follow the Orthodox school, they don't study English, they don't study math, they don't study physics, they don't study science. For a state that is in a state of the survival struggle, and it needs a sophisticated elite supported by intelligent and scholarly-oriented society that understand computers and high-tech.
Yes.
This is not the case. A lot of Israeli sociologists are dealing with this question, I'm not that I'm that clever to raise such an issue. I just read a lot about it. So yeah, they have some serious problems. And then it comes to the most important issue about this crisis. They have a lot to lose, and the Palestinians have nothing to lose.
That's true.
All right? So when you have nothing to lose, and you fight a person or a nation or a collective that have a lot to lose, you basically can only win.
Yes, and they're not very good at compromise, it seems, these last few decades. So it is.
By the way, they've never been good in compromising, and all their most devastating disasters, like 73, that they managed kind of to survive, was because they didn't want to compromise. And when you look at them, the psychological, you employ psychological terminology. We are dealing with them basically a manic depressive collective. They are really bouncing between euphoric moments and total depression.
Mm-hmm.
And this is something that we see all along. It's quite fascinating to watch. You watch other countries like America now. They're not depressed and they're not euphoric about it. They understand that they're going down. They understand that they don't have production. They understand that they are in a political limbo. That the opposition, the Democratic Party, is running by a senile. The leader is a narcissist lunatic. They see it, but they're not euphoric and they're not depressed about it. In Israel, you follow the mood, it is jumping down and disasters, and they go to the street and they're running into fascism. And, it's quite funny. They are really funny people.
That is quite true.
They are really funny people, and I spent the last 22 years dealing with it. I'm a saxophonist. I did such a great career as a musician, and I recorded with everyone. And once I started to look into them, I couldn't stop. They're fascinating. They're fascinating. People who can cry about the Holocaust 24/7, and while doing that, bringing a disaster on themselves, make themselves hated. Now, why I say that they make themselves hated? Because they complain all the time that anti-Semitism is growing. So if anti-Semitism is growing, all you have to do is to say, what am I doing? If I find out tomorrow that everybody hates me, the last thing that I'm going to do is to say, oh, everybody is mad, everybody is fucked up. No, I'll understand that I did something, that I do something, that I repeatedly do something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, supposed to be very clever, and some of them are very clever. How is it that not one stands up? Not one stands up.
Well, there is some theological explanation, I think, for sure, which also becomes cultural, is that if you believe you are chosen by God and whatever you do is correct, well, then you can never be wrong. It's
I think that if you move it from the theological, and I tell you why I move it from the theological, because most of them don't even believe in God.
Sure.
By the way,
cultural.
They may not believe in God, but they still believe that God made them chosen. It's like they don't believe in God, but they believe in the promised land. All right, so Jewish secularism is in itself a very interesting concept.
Yes.
But the idea of chosenness, a lot of Jews drop God, the left goes. They say, no, I'm not religious. I see them on my Facebook. I have so many Jews that say, oh, yeah, I'm not religious. I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, cultural, They we don't believe in, I believe them. But they still believe in chosenness. So again, I use them as, it's not that I try to pick on them. In fact, I do pick on them because I think that they're awful people. But we have Jewish Voice for Peace. So I tell them, why do you operate in this racially exclusive political cell? So they will tell you, it's serious. They say, don't you see that as Jews we have a special role in the movement? We can criticize. So I told them, I tell them, listen, this is exactly the chosenness. This is exactly the privilege.
Yeah.
You are claiming a privilege that was given to you by an act of nature, by being born a Jew. Mm-hmm. This is biological determinism. You are Hitlerians. I made kind of a strong living. All right? So what is amazing is that that when it comes to secular Jews, they drop God, but they don't drop chosenness. Now, instead of looking at it theological, from a theological perspective, as you did, and I understand why you did it, it's a natural way to go, because when we think Jews, we think Judaism, but most Jews don't believe in Judaism. We have to look at it from a metaphysical perspective. People who see themselves as chosen are not defined by otherness.
Yes.
They're actually afraid, they're fearful of concept of otherness. I go back, and I did it many years ago, I go back to Hegel, master-slave dialectics. Hegel taught us, and this is the moment, this is a forming idea for Karl Marx. Hegel, forming moment. Hegel understood that the way we perceive ourselves is the outcome of dialectic relationship between the way what we think we are and the way we see ourselves through the other. So if I have a feeling that you actually, I think that I'm the greatest man ever lived, but I can feel that you have some doubts about it. I hope not. And my view of myself will be kind of ambivalent. I will be slightly unsure. Yeah. This is where Hegel developed the master-slave dialectics. Mm-hmm. The master, let's start with the slave. The slave knows that he's a slave, and he knows that the master is a master. The master looks at him as a slave, so he knows that he is down. He has a way to go up. This is the proletarian revolution. The master looks at the slave. You can see that the slave looks at him as a master, but the slave is a worthless human being. In the Hegelian, I'm not now getting into Black Lives Matter issue. All right, I'm talking about Hegel. The master sees the slave as a worthless human being, so his admiration was nothing. The master is dead, the slave is rising. All right? If you are chosen, you remove yourself from master-slave dialectics.
Of course.
There is no other. Now, where the other comes into play, because you think that you are chosen, you know that you are chosen, but you're not so sure. Okay? You think that you run the world, but you are not so sure. You think that you can do whatever you want to do to Farrakhan, but all that time you become more fearful because you think maybe one day somebody will come out and be point at us at the core of all those problems. And they will have a lot to back it up with. It happened before.
Yes.
So you're not so sure. So the more dominant they become, the more fearful they happen to be. And this dialectics is part of this collective psychology. So this is a metaphysical explanation rather than theological.
Well, I think that we can stop on this warning, on this avertissement. And for people who may not know, Gilad Atzmon is a very famous and excellent musician. I will put the links below to his website, and of course also a writer to his books. And Gilad, I thank you very much for your talk. I think that
Man, we should do it once a week. I really, I'm practicing a lot now because of the lockdown and all this nonsense, and I write less and actually talk a lot. So it's good.
Very interesting. I think you in 2 hours, last time and this time, you've encompassed, as I said, the Jewish question, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and then we can go around it, but you touched the core, I think, and I cannot disagree. I'm actually agreeing, even if, of course, I will remind that I like people and individuals from all places and all countries.
By the way, I'm the same. I don't know if I'm giving these master classes every Sunday on Facebook for free, kind of live, and there are kind of 1,000 people, 800 or whatever. It's quite an amazing thing because I never had a class with more than 20, 30 people. So suddenly I have 800 people. It's an amazing thing. And so many of them are Israelis. And they know what I think, and many of them agree with me. And more interesting, many of them don't agree with me, and they don't care. They don't care because if Israel gave something to the Jews, it's the opportunity to stop being Jewish. And Israel is losing now.
I understand. Well, Gilad, thank you very much, and we'll speak again.
Anytime. Bye-bye.